Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Govinda Devi ki jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Good to see all of you. Very excited to be here today with all of you because now we have a dual festival. We are celebrating the last day of Navaratri and also Vijayotsava, which is also known as Dussehra or Ram Vijayotsava, the day where Lord Ram was victorious over the demon Ravan. So we'll be talking about the 9th form of the goddess Durga, Siddhidatri, and we'll also be talking a little bit about what is real victory and how we can be victorious in this life. And it's all going to coincide. Everything is going to hold hands. We're all going to make it link up together, and we'll see the mystical ways in which all of this combines. So, are we ready? The color of the day was purple, but there's also a little green mixed in because Jai Sri Ram. So, I hope that we've all made our hearts ready and our minds ready for this spiritual excursion, this most wonderful meditation and adventure, and we will prime our minds and get our hearts into the right atmosphere by, of course, singing Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannava Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatiravana Chari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatiravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Radhe Govinda Jaya Radhe Govinda Shri Radha Madhava ki jai Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. So over the past 9 days, we have been on an incredible journey. We have spoken about happy forms of Durga. We have spoken about blissful forms of Durga Devi. We have spoken about sorrowful forms of Durga Devi. We have spoken about angry forms, and we've spoken about forms which can capture the mind of the very Lord of her life, Mahadev. Today is about a more mysterious form. And the reason I say mysterious is because she presides over all mystic potencies. She is known as Siddhidatri, or one who can award all mystical perfections. So she is a yogini, quite wonderful, 4 arms, sometimes riding on a lion and sometimes sitting on a lotus. And in her 4 arms, in her 4 hands, she holds a chakra, or a disc, a club, a lotus flower, and a conch shell. And one can think, I feel like I've seen these specific instruments before in this same kind of grouping. And of course we have seen this iconography in the wonderful, majestic form of Lord Vishnu. So, she is known as Siddhidatri. She has 4 hands, and she holds all of the symbols of Lord Vishnu. Isn't that amazing? But over the past few days, we've been speaking about how this goddess, in all of her variegated forms, is none other than the younger sister of our Supreme Lord Vishnu. And we've been speaking about how she is none other than Yogamaya, his internal potency who knows his mind even better than he does, who at a moment's notice is able to direct his pastimes wherever the Lord needs them to go. And in nowhere is this more prevalent and most completely present than in the divine realm of Sri Vrindavan Dham. So today, we are going to be talking about how she exerts her power, her mystical potencies, how she uses all of these mystical abilities to the best of her purpose, for the most highest purpose within Sri Vrindavan Dham. And we'll be speaking a little bit about Sri Rama. So it is said that at the dawn of time, we heard how Lord Brahma himself from Skanda Purana said, just when I was first conceived of, I looked and I saw a divine being, and as that being came into form, I knew that being as Ardhanarishwara, the being that is the very form and the very beginning of Lord Shiva and Parvati Devi, Mahadev and Shakti, in their most concentrated, complete, absolute form. And then, he says somehow that form split into two, and that became the basis for Lord Brahma creating male and female forms. So it is said that this most complete form is innate and imbibed and empowered within the form of Siddhidatri Devi. So she is able to award all mystical abilities and mystical potencies. But what is the mystical potency that we want? What is the mystical potency that we yearn for from her? That we would like to beg from her? We would like that mystical ability and that mystical potency to always, somehow, remain close, near and dear to the Lord of our hearts. We yearn somehow to forever remain close to Sri Govinda Dev. We yearn to somehow, some way, become a part of those eternal pastimes within Sri Vrindavan Dham. We started this 9-day journey with Srimad Bhagavatam and the story of Sati. And so I find it quite fitting that we come toward the end of this journey and we also begin with Srimad Bhagavatam. So of course we will chant our mystical invocation to fully inaugurate this final day of wonderful festivities. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so within the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who has full potency, will personally appear as the son of Vasudeva. Therefore, all the wives of the demigods should also appear in order to satisfy him. The foremost manifestation of Krishna is Sankarshan, who is known as Ananta. He is the origin of all incarnations within this material world. Previous to the appearance of Lord Krishna, this original Sankarshan will appear as Baladev, just to please the Supreme Lord Krishna in his transcendental pastimes. The potency of the Lord, known as Vishnu Maya, who is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will also appear with Lord Krishna. This potency, acting in different capacities, captivates all the worlds, both material and spiritual. At the request of her master, she will appear with her different potencies in order to execute the work of the Lord. And so I think it's fitting, if we look at this one text, Canto 10, Chapter 1, Text 25, and we look at how she is referred to. The potency of the Lord, known as Vishnu Maya, who is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will also appear with Lord Krishna. This reminds me of why Siddhidatri bears those same instruments of Lord Vishnu. She is Vishnu Maya, as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, always engaged in doing everything just to execute the work of the Lord. In the purport it says, Parasya Shaktir Vivideva Shruyate. In the Vedas, it is said that the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called by different names, such as Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Ultimately, however, the Lord's potency is one, exactly as electric potency is one, although it can act both to cool and to heat. The Lord's potency acts in both the spiritual and material worlds. In the spiritual world, the Lord's potency acts as Yogamaya, and in the material world, that same potency works as Mahamaya, exactly as electricity works in both a heater and a cooler. In the material world, this potency, working as Mahamaya, acts upon the conditioned souls to deprive them more and more of devotional service. It is said, in the material world, the conditioned soul thinks of himself as a product of three guna, the three modes of material nature. This is the bodily conception of life. Because of associating with the three gunas of the material potency, everyone identifies himself with his body. Someone is thinking he is a Brahmana, someone is thinking a Kshatriya, and someone a Vaishya or Sudra. Actually, however, one is neither a Brahman, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, nor a Shudra. One is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Mamayavamsa. But because of being covered by the material energy Mahamaya, one identifies himself in these different ways. When the conditioned soul becomes liberated, however, he thinks himself an eternal servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. When he comes to that position, the same potency, acting as Yogamaya, increasingly helps him become purified and devote his energy to the service of the Lord. In either case, whether the soul is conditioned or liberated, the Lord is supreme. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, it is by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the material energy Mahamaya works upon the conditioned soul. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. Within conditioned life, no one has freedom, but because one is bewildered, being subject to the rule of Mahamaya, one foolishly thinks himself independent. But when the conditioned soul becomes liberated by executing devotional service, he is given a greater and greater chance to relish a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different transcendental statuses, such as Dasya Ras, Sakhya Ras, Vatsalya Ras, and Madhurya Ras. Thus, the Lord's potency, Vishnu Maya, has two features, Avaranika and Unmukha. When the Lord appeared, his potency came with him and acted in different ways. She acted as Yogamaya with Yashoda and Devaki and other intimate relations of the Lord, and she acted in a different way with Kamsa, Shalva, and other Asuras. By the order of Lord Krishna, his potency Yogamaya came with him and exhibited different activities according to the time and circumstances. Yogamaya acted differently to execute different purposes desired by the Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. The Mahatmas, who fully surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord, are directed by Yogamaya, whereas the Duratmas, those who are devoid of devotional service, are directed by Mahamaya. So how wonderfully she is described. This very internal potency, working just to execute the Lord's activities in whichever way he requires. Any and every way he requires. Whether it is by striking fear into the heart of Kamsa as Durga Devi, or by covering over the mind of Yashoda, so that when she sees the universal form, the whole entire universe within the mouth of her child, as she's looking for teeth, she thinks, what is this? How could I have seen this? And in the next moment she thinks, I haven't seen anything. He's just my baby. It is said that when Sri Krishna was just a small baby, sometimes as he was drinking milk, he would open his mouth and his mother would look and try and see if there were pearl-like teeth growing. When babies are new and they have no teeth, that's one of my favorite times because it's just all gums and they're so sweet and their faces are so chubby and adorable and plump and squishy. And I can only imagine, just imagine the beauty of Sri Krishna with his beautiful smile and his gorgeous deep blue complexion, dark, dark as a thundercloud, and his mother wondering, are there any pearl-like buds forming in my child's mouth? Sometimes mothers will put their finger in the child's mouth and reach across the gums just to see if they can feel anything growing there. And it describes that as she would feel those pearl-like buds growing, her joy would know no bounds. Indescribable joy. But sometimes, when her child would yawn, or when she would look into his mouth, she would get a glimpse of something extraordinary. Universes, planets. In one such occasion, just to get out of trouble, Krishna displays this universe within his mouth, and she sees not only the universe but herself. And in one moment, she has a spiritual realization. I am thinking myself to be the wife of Nanda Maharaj. I am thinking myself to be the queen of Vrindavan, the ruler of many subjects, and the mother of this child, and yet somehow now I am seeing that I am a servant of the Supreme Lord, who is none other than this child who has taken birth in my home. And then, just to facilitate the pastimes of Sri Krishna, Yoga Maya exerts her energy over Sri Yashoda Devi until Yashoda decides, this can't be. He's just my child. And if he's my child and I don't feed him, who will look after him? What will happen to him? Who knows what will become of him? He's so restless. He goes and he steals food from other people's homes. My child is so restless that he'll sometimes grab the tail of a calf. He has no idea about what's right and what's wrong. Right now, I have to teach him. And if I don't teach him, who will? And if I don't teach him, my child will fall into danger. I have to protect him with all kinds of mantras and with all kinds of protective amulets and talismans. I have to make sure that my child is protected. And that's all that she can think of. As she holds her child close to her chest, thinking, he's just my child, and now I'll never let him go anywhere. This is the Yoga Maya potency of Sri Krishna. This is what she does for the pleasure of Sri Krishna. Within Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is written, the Supreme Sri Krishna has two types of illusory potencies, Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Yogamaya acts in the spiritual world to make excellent arrangements for Krishna's manifold pastimes. Yogamaya enables Krishna's loving associates, with their ever-expanding love for Krishna, to transcend the bounds of majesty and reverence, and completely forget that Sri Krishna is the supreme God of all the universes. Under the influence of Yogamaya, a pure devotee may treat Krishna as their helpless child, a handsome boyfriend, or a playmate. They ignore the power and greatness of Krishna while relishing his infinite beauty and sweetness. To give service to the Lord, Yogamaya appeared along with Mahamaya. Mahamaya refers to one who bewilders the entire material world. The entire creation has two divisions, transcendental or spiritual, and material. Yogamaya manages the spiritual world, and by her partial expansion as Mahamaya, she manages the material world. The Narada Pancharatra states that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has one potency, Yogamaya, and Mahamaya is a partial expansion of Yogamaya, sometimes called Durga. When one understands Durga properly, he is immediately liberated, for Durga is originally the spiritual potency, Ladini Shakti, by whose mercy one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. The Mahamaya Shakti is a covering of Yogamaya, and she is therefore called the covering potency. By this covering potency, the entire material world is bewildered and falsely identifying themselves with the temporary material body. The distinction between the two Mayas is described as follows. Krishna's Leela with the gopis, and the gopis' bewilderment in respect to their husbands, fathers-in-law, and other such relatives, were arrangements of Yogamaya, in which Mahamaya had no influence. On the other hand, there were asuras, demons like Shalva and Duryodhana, who were bereft of devotional service, in spite of seeing Krishna's carrier Garuda and the universal form, and who could not understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This was also bewilderment, but this bewilderment was due to Mahamaya. Therefore, it is to be concluded that the Maya, which drags a person from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Mahamaya, and the Maya, which acts on the transcendental platform to nourish the rasa and to facilitate Krishna's sweet loving pastimes, is called Yogamaya. Yogamaya is the name of the internal potency that makes the Lord forget himself and become an object of love for his pure devotee in different transcendental mellows. The Yogamaya potency creates a spiritual sentiment in the minds of the damsels of Braj, by which they think of Krishna as their paramour. This is this wonderful goddess containing all of these potencies. What potency does she have? What can she do? She can exert such a potency that Krishna forgets himself. So when he is running away in fear of his mother, the one who strikes fear in the heart of fear personified, when he is running away in fear of his mother, rubbing his eyes with his two lotus hands again and again, his neck shaking, his necklace around his neck shaking from his quick breathing because of his crying. Is this just an act? Is Krishna not really afraid? Is he just acting? No. Krishna, in that moment, is no longer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He no longer even thinks of himself as having many potencies, as having controlling potencies, as being the very same Lord from which innumerable universes come out from his pores. At that moment, he is no more than a boy who was very hungry, who was very angry after being put down by his mother, and is now incredibly afraid because his mother is chasing him with a stick. Who can fathom this? He's just 3 or 4, running as fast as his 2 chubby legs can carry him. Sometimes wearing cloth, sometimes wearing no cloth at all. Running in fear of his mother. Because his mother, up until this point, she's been quite wonderful and quite loving. But now, he has incited her anger so much that she's chasing him with a stick. He no longer thinks of himself as the supreme anything. He's just the son of his mother. And he is drowning in the waves of her love. He who drowns the inhabitants of Vrindavan in waves of love for him Now he is running in fear of his mother because he himself is drowning in the waves of her love, overcome by that rasa. And how is it that he can forget? This is the Yogamaya potency. The one person who can make Krishna forget himself. It is said that this potency does a myriad of things within Sri Vrindavan Dham. She acts upon the gopis and makes them forget themselves when they hear the sound of the flute, leaving their homes, leaving their duties, leaving their families, leaving whatever they were doing at that moment, even if they were in the midst of dressing. They run from their homes to go and find out, where is Krishna playing this flute? And then it is described within Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that the flute song of Krishna appears as this mystical yogini. And as a yogini, she then pulls the gopis toward Krishna, whether they want to go or not. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written a beautiful Govinda Devastakam. And within that Govinda Devashtakam, it states that the gopis are pulled by the sound of the flute, even though they stand far away, blocking their ears from the sound, and sometimes blocking their noses from catching the fragrance of Govinda Dev. Still, he captures them and binds them to him by force of love. This is the Yogamaya potency. This same Yogamaya potency even acts on Krishna when he is far away from Vrindavan, in the realm of Dwarka. It makes him unable to sleep at night, thinking, how are my family members in Braj Bhumi? What has happened to my family members in Braj Bhumi? This same potency makes him cry into the lap of Uddhava, saying, Uddhava, only you can understand my heart. Who else can I explain it to here? It is this potency which makes him, when he thinks and hears of the love of the gopis and of Radharani, taking an extraordinary form, where his arms shrink into his body, his eyes grow wide with wonder, and a blissful smile grows upon his face. It is this potency which acts on him when he is submerged in the waves of Mahabhav and then assumes the wonderful form of Jagannath. Hearing about the bliss of the gopis and hearing about his long lost pastimes in Braj Bhumi. These pastimes of Govinda are so sweet that Krishna himself says, I yearn to go back and enjoy those pastimes as Govinda. I yearn to enjoy the sweetness that is Govinda's name, fame, form, and bliss. He is the ornament of Vrindavan. I yearn to taste that sweetness again and again. So Krishna forgets himself. This is the all-encompassing potency that resides within this goddess, who is just as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which we read from Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, just as worshipable. And it is because she can draw us closer to Sri Krishna. She can draw us closer and somehow give us a place in that divine realm. She is the great director of pastimes. So when Krishna was a baby, it is described in many places like Gopal Champu, that Mother Yashoda would hold her son on her lap. And sometimes she would press her face close to his And sometimes she would make him laugh, and then she would laugh, and then she would make him laugh again. Sometimes by babbling very sweet things, sometimes by making silly faces. Sometimes she would place her child in her lap on his back, and she would take his feet and press them to her face, reveling in the joy that she felt from pressing her little boy just close to her body. Who can describe the great fortune of Mother Jashoda? However, there were pastimes to be had, and there was a great demon entering into the realm of Sri Vrindavan Dham. This demon was Trinavarta. But in order for Trinavarta to arrive and to conspire to perform his dastardly deeds, Mother Jashoda had to put Krishna down. But why would Mother Yashoda ever put her child down? Not when she was having this much fun with him. And so it is described within Gopal Champu that Yoga Maya appears invisible and then enters the body of Sri Krishna and then exerts her power over the both of them. And what she does is she makes Krishna heavier and heavier and heavier until Mother Yashoda thinks, oh, what is happening? I can't possibly hold my child. And so she has to put him down for a moment. And then she thinks, let me go and attend to some household duties. I can't believe I forgot. And so she goes into the house to attend to many of her duties. And at that moment, Trinavarta comes. He arrives. And he goes and he picks up Krishna, swirls him into the air, and it describes that Krishna was enjoying a very nice ride on the demon, way high up into the air. We've seen sometimes that parents hold their children, and then they go and they toss them up into the air, and then they catch them. And sometimes the child's laughing, laughing, laughing. There's a little bit of fear, but then they're also laughing. And so Krishna is enjoying this high rise ride into the sky until finally he catches Trinavarta around the neck, and he just holds on. He just holds on. And now Trinavarta is feeling like, oh, he's feeling choked and he doesn't know what's happening. But he's okay because he's a demon. He has such great mystic potencies. But that same potency that made Krishna heavy within his mother's arms, once again, acts. And now Krishna is heavier and heavier, heavier than the heaviest. That is one of the mystic potencies that can be obtained by Siddhidatri Mati. One who can become heavier than the heaviest. And now all of a sudden, he's so heavy, and the demon is now crashing down to the ground. And it sounds like many trees have fallen. This is the Yogamaya potency, where Krishna desires, sometimes, he will express that he is God. But mostly, he won't. Because that's not what he wants. There are so many times where Krishna forgets himself in the realm of love. Within the book Spiritual Tonic by His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj, it is described that Krishna goes stealthily into many corridors, into the storeroom. He's like a little baby ninja. And he goes and he sees the storeroom of butter. He heads into that storeroom and he breaks pots, and then he goes to steal the butter. But thinking that his mother has caught on to his deeds, he's constantly looking around wondering, where is she? And then he looks and he sees there's a jeweled pillar, because everything within the realm of Vrindavan Dham is incredibly opulent. So even within the storerooms, there is a jeweled pillar, and Krishna sees there's a little boy looking back at him, and he thinks, oh, where did you come from? Who are you? Well, look, whoever you are, it doesn't matter. I am here, and I'm having this butter. I want that you just don't tell my mother what happened. If you see her, you can let me know that she's nearby, but don't tell her anything. And then he looks at the pillar and he thinks, I don't know if this boy can be trusted. And so he takes some of the butter and he eats the butter. And then he takes some of the butter and then he smears it on the boy in the pillar. And he says, look, look, look. Now you have eaten butter. So now you've become complicit in this act of stealing. Okay? So you can't tell. Because now I'm not a thief, you're a thief. Okay? So make sure that you don't tell anybody what you saw. This is our Krishna, under the influence of his own Yogamaya potency. This is our Krishna, who wanders here and there through the dusty lanes of Vrindavan Dham, where the dust colors his hair a beautiful color, where the dust from the cow's hooves raising as he comes home alerts anyone and everyone that he is coming home. This is our Govinda, under the influence of his own potency. How wonderful and mystical is our beloved Lord and best friend. So, how does this figure into the pastime of Sri Rama? How does this figure into Vijayotsava? How does this figure into Ram Vijayotsava? Well, what is true victory? According to Srila Prabhupada, we begin in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with a quote from Lord Chaitanya himself. My dear friend, the luster of Krishna's body is more brilliant than a newly formed cloud, and his yellow dress is more attractive than newly arrived lightning. A peacock feather decorates his head, and on his neck hangs a lovely necklace of brilliant pearls. As he holds his charming flute to his lips, his face looks as beautiful as the full autumn moon. A full autumn moon which is coming, by the way. By such beauty, Madan Mohan, the enchanter of Cupid, increases the desire of my eyes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continues, Sri Krishna's complexion is as polished as powdered eye ointment. So we have all these like kajals now, right? We have a gel kajal, we have all these things, and the gel kajal is supposed to be incredibly fine and polished. So Sri Krishna's complexion is as polished as powdered eye ointment. It surpasses the beauty of a newly formed cloud, and it is softer than a blue lotus flower. Indeed, his complexion is so pleasing that it attracts the eyes and minds of everyone. And it is so powerful that it defies all comparison. My dear friend, please tell me what I should do. Sri Krishna is as attractive as a wonderful cloud, and my eyes are just like Chataka birds dying of thirst in the absence of such a cloud. Sri Krishna's yellow dress looks exactly like restless lightning in the sky, and his pearl necklace appears like a line of ducks below a cloud. Both the peacock feather on his head and his Vijayanti garland, containing flowers of 5 colors, resemble rainbows. The luster of Sri Krishna's body is as beautiful as a spotless full moon that has just risen, and the vibration of his flute sounds exactly like the sweet thundering of a newly formed cloud. When the peacocks in Vrindavan hear that vibration, they all begin to dance. The cloud of Sri Krishna's pastimes is drenching the 14 worlds with a shower of nectar. Unfortunately, when that cloud appeared, A whirlwind arose and blew it away from me. Now, being unable to see the cloud, the Chataka bird of my eyes is almost dead from thirst. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada asserts that attraction to the sweetness of Radha Krishna or Krishna Balaram is always victorious. So what is real victory? The attraction to the sweetness of Radha Krishna or Krishna Balaram, who is also affectionately called Ram. Krishna is also affectionately called Ram, because they are both reservoirs of unlimited pleasure. The devotee who is accustomed to view their transcendental forms never becomes ensnared by the illusory beauty of this world. This is true victory. In this way, when one is attracted by the lustrous beauty of Sri Krishna, who is always happy in the company of his consorts, the shackles of conditioned life, represented by mundane beauty, cannot attract the sadhaka. This is still none other than that Yogamaya potency. This is what Siddhidatri Devi can gift to us. True victory. How can we become victorious? By becoming attracted to the forms and pastimes of Sri Radha Govinda and or Krishna Balaram. Those beautiful pastimes and forms within Sri Vrindavan Dham which hold the attention of everyone. So we can pray to her today on this dual day where we are celebrating both this end of Navaratri and Vijayotsava, to give us true Ram Vijayotsava, that glorious, victorious vision of Ram Govinda. Whether we take that to mean Govinda, who is a reservoir of pleasure, or we take that to mean Sri Krishna Balaram, whatever is the nature of the heart of that devotee, she can bless us with that victory. She can bless us with that internal ability to relish those pastimes just according to our heart's desire. Let us yearn for true victory for our hearts. Let us yearn for this real victory over the demon that resides within our hearts. Ravana was an expert Brahmana. It is said that when the battle was to begin, and indeed just after Sri Ram crossed his mystically made bridge, in order to enter into Lanka, there had to be specific sacrifices done. There had to be like a welcoming party by qualified Brahmanas. And there were no qualified Brahmanas who were more qualified than Ravan. So Ravana was called to that place where Sri Ram entered into Lanka. And he performs the sacrifice there to welcome Ram into the city. And so Ravan performs the sacrifices. Ironically, he blesses Sri Ram with victory, Vijay Bhava, and then he goes back into his palace. How wonderful is this potency, which can delude and confuse everyone. So, and it is said that just before the battle is to begin, in order to inaugurate the battle and to create an atmosphere of auspiciousness, as auspicious as possible, they needed to perform certain sacrifices to purify the atmosphere. And those could only also be done by qualified Brahmanas. And since Ravana was the most qualified of Brahmanas, once again, he performs these sacrifices. and then engages in battle with Sri Ram. It is said that at the end, after Sri Ram has defeated Ravan, he tells Lakshman to go and speak with Ravan and find out all that the demon knows about ruling, about being a Brahmin, about so many things. So Sri Ram goes and, along with Lakshman, they hear from Ravan about proper rulership. So, what was his problem? Ravan's problem was his uncontrolled lust. He decided that all beautiful things should belong to him no matter what. Had he been able to surrender Sita back to Ram, Ram says, if anyone, including Ravan, just once comes to me and says, my Lord, I am yours, I seek your shelter, he says, I must give them shelter. If anyone surrenders to me just once, and he sent message after message after message to Ravan, if you just surrender now, we can end this. If you just surrender now, we can end this. If you just surrender now, we can end this. However, Ravan's lust was so great and overpowering that he refused to surrender. So although he was a great Brahmana, and although he was a great ruler, and although he had incredible wealth, his lust got him. So we can pray to Siddhidatri Devi, to Yogamaya Devi, that she can help us overcome this quality within our own hearts, this attachment to things that I say, this is mine, and it must be mine against all odds. Even at the risk of my devotional life, this must be mine. I must possess it. To somehow enjoy the energy of the Lord without the Lord, that's the mistake. That is when we become thieves. And indeed, when Krishna would steal from the gopis, they would grab him by the arm and they say, you thief, and he'd point back at them and say, I'm not a thief, you're a thief. Everything belongs to me anyway, you're a thief, you're stealing. So, when we start thinking, this is my house, my family, my wife, my children, my husband, my whatever, instead of thinking, I have within my care the most wonderful servant of my divine Lord. That's when that demon within the heart starts to rear its head. My Guru Maharaj says, even though Ram would shoot arrow after arrow after arrow at Ravana's heads, they would simply reappear. And so he said, anyone ever experienced something like that? We have our unwanted characteristics within our hearts, our anarthas. We have so many different lust, anger, greed, so many things. We think we've defeated them. And then they rise again within the heart. But it is not until we surrender to that arrow, which is like the potency of the Guru. We surrender to that arrow within the heart. It's not until then that we can defeat that demon and raise ourselves to the platform of being controlled by Yogamaya instead of Mahamaya, begging to be controlled by Yogamaya, by which everyone forgets themselves in an overwhelming, unending ocean of bliss and nectar. So this was Ravana's problem. His yearning to enjoy the energy of the Lord without serving the Lord, and his unwillingness to surrender. He was given so many chances. He even goes and seeks the advice of Bali Maharaj, who tells him, you should surrender, you're going to die. And still he does not. So we can pray and we can hope to surrender those unwanted abilities, let go of them, and to yearn to cultivate the attachment to trying to serve the energy of the Lord along with the Lord. And I'll end with a little story and then a prayer. In days gone by, Lord Ramachandra, in the association of Lakshman and Sita, wandered in exile for 14 years. In the forest of Dandakaranya, there were many sages whose method of sadhana followed in the wake of the Brajagopis. One might be wondering, how is this possible? Usually Lord Ram appears before Lord Krishna, different yugas in fact. However, what we hear is that these pastimes go on eternally. And so sometimes, because these pastimes go on eternally, we hear, you can hear, oh, Krishna has appeared. Oh, so many different things. This has appeared, that's appeared, this has appeared. In fact, in the gorgeous pastimes of Lord Ram, Sita Devi sits with Ram one day while they are in exile. And Ram speaks about a form that he is going to take. Sita Devi says, oh, my lord, well, what does this form look like? And he says, Devi, I'll show you. And with one arrow, he carves a wonderful form of a deity. And that deity, he says, here, look, this is what the deity looks like. 2 arms, holding a flute, gorgeously curved in 3 places, looking majestic, like a wonderful dark cloud. Sita Devi looks at this form, this murti, and her heart is completely captivated. She stares and stares and stares and stares. And finally, Ram says, wait now, give me back the deity. She's gotten so attached to this deity. And so he places the deity in that place. And I believe that this is the deity who is called Gopinath. This is the very same deity who later becomes known as Kirchor Gopinath, the deity who steals sweet rice for the great Madhavendra Puri. And so this deity was supposed to be carved by Sri Rama himself to show Sita the beauty of the form of Sri Krishna. So these pastimes happen again and again. And they happen in different days of Lord Brahma. And so we hear mystical bits and pieces of these pastimes over and over again. So these sages had also heard of the pastimes of Sri Krishna. And so their sadhana followed in the wake of the Brajagopis. When the sages saw the beauty of Sri Ram possessing broad shoulders, lotus eyes, a gentle smile, and a kind demeanor, they were reminded of their personal object of worship, Gopal. Rising from their seats, they greeted him whose beauty was like millions of Kamadevs and said, here is Lord Gopal, who has come to our hermitage without his flute and stick for tending cows. Bowing down before Sri Ramachandra, offering many eloquent prayers, they pleased the all-knowing Lord, who addressed them in the following way. O sages, I am very pleased by your austerities and mode of worship. Please choose a benediction from me. The sages had a desire for a conjugal loving relationship with the Lord. Being in the bodies of males, They were hesitant and embarrassed to express their desires, and remaining silent, simply thought within their minds, Yata Sita Tata Sarve. As Sita is, let us all become. Speaking aloud, Sri Ram said, had you asked this request of Brother Lakshman, I would have arranged for the fulfillment of your desire today. Sri Ram continuously seems to tell people, well, if you'd asked to marry Lakshman, it wouldn't be a problem. But since you asked to marry me, there's a problem. I can only wonder what Lakshman is thinking throughout this whole pastime. It's like, he had a wife, he had Urmila, but constantly Ram is like, well, had you asked Lakshman, it wouldn't have been a problem, but since you asked me. I know Lakshman's like, how did I get here again? So he says, had you asked this request of Brother Lakshman, I would arrange for the fulfillment of your desire today. However, I have vowed to accept only one wife, and as I can never be false to my promise, to become as Sita is not possible at present. Dear sages, do not fear. At the end of Dwarpar Yuga, you will all become as Sita, and at that time I will fulfill your desire. With this, Sri Ram bestowed his blessings and left for Panchavati with his dear wife and devoted brother. In this way, Ramachandra, who is a desire tree of mercy and the super soul in the hearts of all, bestowed his causeless mercy upon the sages of Dandakaranya. Though sincere sadhakas, they were still incomplete in their mode of worship. Thus, Lord Ram elevated them to the mature platform of spontaneous devotion, surpassing the stages of firm faith, attraction, and even attachment. Although the sages were attracted by the beauty of the Lord, as a consequence of their male forms, Ramachandra's vow to accept only one wife, and their lack of complete purity, they were unable to fulfill their desires in that lifetime. Under the direction of Sri Ram, Yogamaya arranged for the sages to take birth from the wombs of Brajagopis. When they reached puberty, they manifested all the symptoms of Purvarag for Krishna, which is the manifestations of symptoms of being in love with someone even before really meeting them face to face. And by the association of the eternally liberated gopis, all remaining material contamination in their hearts burned up. Finally, they achieved the advanced stages of Prem, Sneha, Mana, and up to Mahabhav, and by good fortune attained the ultimate perfection of life. The story of Lord Ram and the sages of Dandakaranya is an example of how attraction to the overwhelming beauty of Sri Krishna exerts its influence on males and females alike. This beauty is the perfection of the eyes, and in eradicating attraction to illusory energy, it is the impetus to perfection for sadhakas and siddhas alike. Of the many groups of gopis in Vrindavan, those who came from the sages of Dandakaranya forest are known by devotees as the Rishichari gopis. So, under the direction of Lord Ram, Yogamaya even made sure that those Dandakaranya sages had their wishes fulfilled in Brajbhumi. So we can pray, because this is the perfection to be attached to the beauty of our Lord, is the perfection for sadhakas and siddhas alike. What is that mystical potency? The mystical potency is to be attracted to Krishna. I yearn for that mystical ability to be attracted to Govinda over and above anything and everything. Giving up anything and everything. Abandoning anything and everything. Especially my own ego and those things that create obstacles within my own heart. Yearning for that mystical potency to just be attracted to the form of Ram Govinda. So from the wonderful Kalyana Kalpataru, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has left us with a prayer to this divine goddess Yogamaya. The likes of such a lowly soul as me is not found anywhere in this world. Thus I have become most agitated due to falling into this vast ocean of material existence. O Yogamaya, when will you show mercy to me by lifting up the curtain of illusion with which you shroud the universe in your external form as Mahamaya? You are known as Kula Devi, the traditional worshipable goddess of all Vaishnav dynasties. I have heard of your glories and activities from the Vedic literatures. You take all those souls who are averse to Krishna and bind them within the material world. To that person whose good fortune gradually dawns, allowing him to again become favorably disposed to Krishna, you award liberation and free him from all grief and fear. O my dear mother, showing your causeless mercy to this servant, give me a place in Vrindavan, for you are Yogamaya herself, the internal energy of yoga or union. Without complying with you, no soul at any time can get Krishna, for the manifestation of Krishna's pastimes is all enacted only by your mercy. You are the devoted follower of Sri Krishna, and you are the mother of the universe. You have shown me the transcendental touchstone of Krishna consciousness. My dear mother, I sincerely wish that you will let my faith in the Vaishnavas increase at every moment. Without the lotus feet of the devotees of the Lord, Bhaktivinoda is not able to cross over this ocean of material existence. What a wonderful prayer to end our festivities and to bring a close to this wonderful festival. This is Siddhidatri Devi, and this is how we can truly honor and glorify her. Praying for a place within Sri Vrindavan Dham and praying for the faith in the Vaishnavas, which will carry us across this unlimited ocean of material existence, which can be shrunk down to just the water that can fit in the hoof print of a calf by our sweet Lord and his internal potency, who is none other than Yogamaya. Thank you so much for being with me throughout this whole 9-day festival. Thank you for letting me serve you all. Thank you for engaging me in devotional service, engaging me in the recitation of the pastimes of our dearest Lord. Thank you. My gratitude knows no bounds. So thank you all so much. There will be kirtan this evening with my family, so I hope that you will all stay tuned and join in. And until next time, I'm wishing you all a wonderful festival season. Happy Dussehra, happy Ram Vijayotsava, happy Navaratri, happy upcoming Kartik. We are all reveling in this autumn season, and so I'm wishing you all the best seasonal time and festival season ever. Thank you so much. Until we meet again, Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Ambe Mata Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. See you all soon.